In this lesson, we'll learn how to structure the content on a web page using the ordered and unordered list. Stay tuned. So at the end of this lesson, you should know how to group a set of related items in your HTML document. Now, this set of related items is what we call a list. So what is an HTML list? An HTML list allows you to organize data on your web page. Now, there are three types of HTML lists that you would use to organize data on your web page. We have the ordered list. The second one is the unordered list, and the last one is the description list. Now we need to talk about why we need this list in our HTML document. But before that, let me give you a visual example of a list. Okay, so on a web page, this is an example of a list. Is grouping related items together, and each of it will have a bullet point before the item. So this is called an unordered list. Then we have the second type of list that we'll call ordered list. So ordered list will typically have numbers before the item. So this is an ordered list. Yes, so we need a list in our HTML document. But why? I mean, it's very simple, because the list makes information easier to read and visually appealing, like how I demonstrated to you earlier. Once you have a list, you group information together, and so it's visually appealing for you to know the exact information to display to a user. So that is one of the main reasons we need a list in our HTML document. Let's look at the type of list that we can have in our HTML document. We'll start with the unordered list. So what is an unordered list? Well, an ordered list is used to group items that do not need to be in any specific order. For example, a shopping list can be an unordered list. Why? Because we don't need any specific order when we go and shop for items. We can just write all the items that we want on a piece of paper, and the order does not matter. So we can have milk, eggs, bread as the list of items or shopping items. We can change this order. Eggs can come first, followed by milk and then bread, or bread can be the first one, milk and then eggs. The order in which this list is displayed is not important to us, and so we will call it an unordered list. Now, one very common way to identify an unordered list is that the items will be marked with bullets. So you see bullet points prior to the name of the item. That indicates that we are dealing with an unordered list, a list in which the order that the items appear does not matter to us. Right, so next we'll look at how to write an unordered list. So when you want to write an ordered list in your HTML document, how do you go about it? First, you will need the UL element. This UL basically stands for unordered list, and so the first syntax that you need is an opening UL element and the closing UL element. That indicates to our web browser that we are dealing with an unordered list. Now, all the items you'd want to display should be between the opening UL and the closing UL. So you're going to put all your list items inside this element. So in the scenario that we looked at, where we have milk, egg, and bread, it should be displayed this way. So you're going to have your unordered list and then the closing unordered list. Then you have the items that you want to list: milk, eggs, bread. That gives you a structure. We would move on to see the exact structure that you need to create an unordered list. So we learned that in between your UL element, the opening UL and then the closing UL, you need to have your items to displayed. So how do we write the items, this item to be displayed in terms of HTML? There is an li tag that you would use for each item that you want to list. So this is how the structure is going to be. Your li, you are going to have an opening li tag, then a closing li tag. So this li basically stands for list. So an opening li, a closing li, and in between you have the name of the item that you want to display. So if it's item 1, you're going to have an item 1 here. So if you want to list 3 items, then it means you would have to define 3 li elements. So the second one would have the same syntax: an opening li tag, a closing li tag, then the content to be displayed. The next one follow the same: opening li, closing li, then the content to be displayed. So depending on the number of items that you want to list, you would have each corresponding li's in your HTML document. And let's remember that when you are dealing with an unordered list, you should start with your UL and then your UL. So in between your UL element, you are going to have your list items: list 1, list 2, list 3, displayed inside your UL. This means if you want to list your shopping items in an HTML document, what we demonstrated earlier, where you had the milk, eggs, bread, if you want to now list it using your HTML syntax, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have your UL, opening UL, your closing UL, and then the list. So li, the name of the item, milk, and then closing li. The next list item would be an li, the name of the item, x, and then a closing li. Then the last one, an opening li, the item you want to list, and then a closing li. So once you have this structure ready in your HTML document, your web browser can display it on the web page for users to see. And each of these items, when displayed, you are going to have a bullet point prior to the name of the item. Now when we go to the demonstration purpose, you would understand what it means. So let's try and get a concept, and then we will go to our code editor and apply the concept you are learning there. Moving on to our next list type, we have the ordered list. So what is an ordered list? We are going to use an ordered list when the order of the items is important. So you want the item that you are listing to be in a particular order, then you need to use an ordered list. Now let's see the structure of an ordered list. Each item in an ordered list will be typically marked with numbers or letters. This means when you write your unordered list in an HTML document and you run it in your browser, when displayed as a web page, you're going to have numbers prior to the items. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D, or when you want to use Roman numerals, you're going to have I, and IV. Why? Because the order in which these items appear is very important to us. So we need that order to be maintained. So let's take an example. You are given a direction to a place, and the order is: 1, you drive to the end of the road; 2, you turn right; and then 3, you go straight to the first roundabout, and then lastly you turn left at the roundabout. So these orders are very important for you to be able to get to your destination. When you missed any of these orders, you would miss your destination. So to be able to display that to the user, that the order in which I have written this is important, you would need to use an ordered list. So using the school's direction as an example, let's see how we would write an ordered list in our HTML document. So we are going to start with our OL that represents an ordered list, and then the closing OL. In between, we wrap all of this with our list item. So the first list, LI, says drive to the end of the road. Then we close the list. We want to display the next item. We start with an opening LI, turn right, then we close it with a closing LI. Next, an opening LI, content goes straight to the first roundabout, end it by closing it with a closing LI. Begin your next list with an opening LI, have your content, and then close it with a closing LI. So this is very similar to the unordered list. The only difference that you need to pay attention to is for ordered lists we have OL and OL. However, for unordered list, it becomes a UL and a closing UL. There is another concept that you need to know, which is the nested list. So what is a nested list? A nested list is a list. Now this list can either be an ordered or unordered list that appears as an element within another list item or an LI. So what this means is that you are going to have an ordered list or an ordered list within an LI. So you are nesting your list within another list. Now, how does this work? First, you create your list. For example, if you are dealing with unordered list, you are going to have your UL. So your UL and the closing UL, and you are going to now list your item. So each item would be in an LI. Now within one of the LI list item, you will insert another list, and this other list can be UL, which is an unordered list, and then or an OL, which becomes ordered list. Don't worry if you are confused. I'm going to demonstrate it for you to understand it well. So why do we need a nested list in our HTML document? When you nest a list, it allows you to create sub lists within the main list. So nested lists are commonly used for website navigation. So we see when on a website navigation, you're going to have a menu, and then you're going to have sub menus, right? So to be able to create your menus and a sub menu, you need to nest your nest list inside your UL. Also, nested list is for table of content, where you can display the heading, and then you're going to have subheading or subtopics for your document. The final type of list that we would look at is the description list. So what is a description list? A description list is used when you want to define terms and their corresponding descriptions. So when you want to display terms and definitions or questions and answers, you should use a description list. How do we write a description list? So this is the syntax that you need for a description list. We are going to start with a DL, an opening DL, and then a closing DL. So our description item and the description definition will be wrapped inside the opening DL and the closing DL, which is our DL element. This is an example of a description list in our HTML document. You're going to have your opening DL and closing DL, which is your DL element. Then you're going to have a DT element. This DT represents description term. So you're going to have a DT opening tag, a DT closing tag, then the name of the term within the opening and the closing DT tag. Next, you should have the description. So it needs to have a DD element. So we start with our opening DD, our closing DD. Inside this opening and closing tag, we'll have the description of the term. The next illustration, we want to define the term Honda. We want to define the term Honda and then give a description for it. So we are going to have a DT description term Honda, a closing DT. Then the description would come with a DD opening tag, a DD closing tag, and then we'll have our content, a brand of a car. So this demonstrates how to use a DL or a description element in your HTML document when you want to display terms and their definition or questions and answers. Next, we would put all the concepts we've learned into practice. I would launch my code editor and I'll demonstrate how to create 4 things: unordered list, ordered list, a nested list, and a description list. So let's jump right in. Alright, so I have my HTML document opened, and within this file we want to learn 3 things. First is how to create an unordered list. Then the next we'll learn how to create an ordered list. Then lastly we'll learn how to create a description list. So stay tuned. Okay, so how do we create an unordered list? First, we know we need to start with our opening UL tag and the closing UL tag. Right, so let's move on to the next line and then let's create a UL tag. So I'm going to write my UL tag here, and then I'm going to close this UL tag. Right, so I have my opening UL tag and the closing UL tag. Now in between the opening UL tag and the closing UL tag, I need to have my list item. So every item I want to display on my web page should be in a list, should be in an li tag. So what I would need to do is to first write my opening li tag and the closing li tag. So let's write it. I have my opening li tag, then I have my closing li tag. Now in between the opening li tag and the closing li tag, I would write my item I want to display. So the first item, I'm writing milk. Right, now we want to display 3 items, so let's go to the next line, write our opening li tag, then close that li tag, and then in between the opening and then the closing li tag, I write X as the second item I want to display on my web page. Then I move on to the last item, my opening li tag, closing li tag, then the item I want to display. This time I'm going to write bread. So to create an unordered list, you will need to wrap your UL tag around your list item, which are your li tag. So you have your opening UL, closing UL, then your list item. So list item 1, list item 2, list item 3, and that you have, and that would give you your unordered list. So let's visit our web page to view the results. Okay, so we are on our web page and we have 3 list items: milk, eggs, and then bread. Now, because these are unordered lists, you see that for each item you will have a bullet. So we have a bullet here, then the item name milk. We have another bullet, the item name eggs, then the third bullet, the item name bread. So this will indicate to you that this is an unordered list, meaning that the order in which these things appear is not so important to us. So let's proceed and see how we create an ordered list. So creating an ordered list would follow the same convention. Now for clarity, I'm just going to create an H2 element, then just give it a heading, creating an ordered list. Okay, so now let's begin with our ordered list. What is the convention? When you want to create an ordered list, you need to start with your opening OL, your closing OL. The opening and closing OL would wrap your list item. So let's write our first OL, then our closing OL. So we have our OL element. Then we list the items we want to display. So let's just say we want everything to be in order. So we'll have our li tag and then say our closing li. Now in between this li is what we want to display. So we say go to the first roundabout. Want to proceed with the next step, so we write li, close the li, then the name of the item. Turn left to the second roundabout. Then the next step, we write our li here and the closing li. In between it will become the item name. Right, so here we have our ordered list with our list items between them. So let's go to our web page and then see the difference between this unordered list and then this ordered list. Now that you've learned about the unordered and ordered list, let's learn how to create a nested list. Okay, so I'm back to my code editor and then I'm going to give it another heading. So I'm going to write an H2 and then just say closing H2. In between this H2, I'm just going to write creating a nested list. Okay, so let's start with our nested list. So how do we create a nested list? We would have our UL or our OL, then we'll have our list item inside the ordered or unordered list. Now within one of the list item, we'll start creating the next item we want to display, which is our nested list. So let's start with a UL. So I have my UL tag here, and then my closing UL. Then I'm just going to list my menu items or my navigational items. So the first one, I'm just going to write a list that I'm calling home. Right, now let's move on to the next list or the next item. My next item I'm calling about. Then I move on to my third item, which I'll name contact us. Okay, so within this list item that's about, I want to now display a nested list. So I want to write about our school, about projects, about our careers, etc. So how do I do it? I come to this list, then inside this list I'm going to create a UL. So I come in between the opening list and the closing list, then I write my UL, then my closing UL. Now I can list the other things I want to display underneath my about. So within this UL, the starting UL and the ending UL, I will list the items I want to display under my about. That becomes my nested list. So I'm going to write an li, close this li, then I write projects. Then I write my next item. So this li, close the li, then I'll write probably management. And then let's do the last item. So my li, close my li, then I'll write careers. Okay, so this becomes a nested list. Why? Because I have my list item, which are 3 items: home, about, and contact us. However, within this about, I am listing another item, which is project management careers. So this becomes a nested list because it is within my list item. Now let's see the results on our web page. Okay, so I've visited my web page. I want to display my unordered list. I want to display my nested list. So I reload my browser and I have my nested list displayed. So you see I have created a nested list. The first list item, home, about, contact us. But the nested list was within the li of the about. So I'm having projects management careers. So this becomes what a nested list. And that is how we would be able to create navigational items when we start building our web pages. So how do we create a description list? We first have our DL. So we have our opening DL, then we close our DL. So closing DL. Now within this opening DL and closing DL, we'll have our description term and description definition. So our description term will come with a syntax, has an opening DT and a closing DT tag. So we'll start with our opening DT, then close that tag, and then we'll have our term. So let's see, our term is Apple. Now we need a description or definition for that term. So we'll start with our opening dd, close the dd, and then we'll have our term within it. So the term is going to become a red colored fruit. Right, so if you want to display the next term, we'll follow the same process. We'll have a description term dt, close that description term, and then our term now is coding. Now we want a description or definition for coding, so we move to our next line, have our opening dd, then close that tag, and then have our definition within the opening and the closing dt. So coding is giving an instruction to a computer. Right, so we have our description list. So we can now visit our web page and then see how the browser is going to take this HTML file and then convert it into a description definition with their corresponding term. So I've come to my web page. I'm going to reload this page, then go down, and then you see our term apple, then the description a red colored fruit. The next term we defined was coding, description, giving an instruction to a computer. So we've learned here how to write a list item in our HTML document and then come to your web page to see it being displayed. We have 3 items displayed. We have how to create an unordered list. Then the next thing we learn is how to create an ordered list using our OL. Then lastly, then we learned how to create a nested list. Then lastly, we learned how to create a description list. So I want to say a very big thank you for taking time to watch this lesson. Please, if you found value in this lesson, please subscribe to my channel, and I would love to read your comments. So please drop a comment if you found value or you want me to clarify any issues you would have. See you next time. Keep coding.